All right, everybody, welcome back to the Catholic Convert Show. If you didn't know, it's May. My son hit me with that joke earlier today. He's like, Dad, did you know it's gonna be May? I'm like, all right, I'm officially putting you up for adoption. But no, we are back. It is Wednesday, May 1st, and I'm back with the resident gangster, Ed.
Good to see you, Jeff. Another beautiful day here in South Jersey. Hope it is the same in South Carolina.
Yeah, man, it's finally not that hot. Yesterday I was dying of pollen, but I think I took enough Allegra that it just saturated my bloodstream and I don't have that many issues today.
Excellent.
So what's going on in Jersey for you, brother?
Uh, you know, not a lot. I woke up this morning. It's always a good thing, always a positive, always a reason to thank God for that. And working hard, getting things done, and looking out the window and watching a neighbor cut his grass. One of those beautiful rites of spring around here. So no, things are
Oh yeah,
good. Things are good. What's up on your end?
about the same here. I'm just waiting on the guy to text me back that I pay to cut my grass because I hate doing yard work. I refuse to do it. I'm gonna have him come out and handle it all for me.
If, if I lived closer, I'd do it for you. I love that kind of stuff.
Well, if you live closer, I would be, fearing for my life that I'm going to get paid a visit by a couple of wise guys. Oh, all right. Well, I was looking earlier and, you and I were talking before we kicked off the recording for this. And I was telling you about that Associated Press piece that came out. And the headline was great, talking about the return to the old ways that traditionalism is sweeping over the Catholic Church in America. They're calling it a step back in time, which to me the whole thing came across like it was intended to be like a liberal propaganda piece, but it ended up just being like a celebration that the church is moving in the right direction, further away from, the more liberalized ideology of the church and closer to the timeless fundamental truths and tradition of the church. Um, but have you seen that same thing that they're talking about? Like there's kind of a conservative esque, more traditionalist swing happening in the churches around you?
To an extent, I mean, I think it's happening a little later and a little slower here, based because I'm in the Northeast, and this is obviously a very liberal part of the country. So it's been slower to take. I've been watching the news and seeing it in dioceses and Wichita and Lincoln, Nebraska, and places like that. And I've been excited to see it maybe shift out towards us at some point. And it's starting. I do know a lot of people who are going that direction, and I think it's a good thing. I mean, you see all these articles and news pieces about the younger people being attracted to the traditions of the church and to the Latin Mass and things like that. And I think there's a reason for that. I think that they're drawn towards authentic Catholicism, and we've been moving away from that for the last number of years. And if you need proof of that, you just sit in on one of my CCD classes, and you'll know that these kids have been raised to think that everything that the church teaches is just suggestive. It's just follow it if you want, don't follow if you don't want. It's okay. Go to church if you want, go to confession if you want. But none of these things are required anymore. Um, and and so their faith suffers for it. I think in the long run their lives suffer for it. I think you need to have a strong foundation in your faith if you're going to be successful as a human being. And so I'll tell you what, I'm excited to see the change. There's a few churches around me that offer the traditional Latin mass, um, and it seems there's another one popping up every few months, even though there's been pushback from the Vatican and things like that. But yeah, it's slowly moving into Jersey, but it is here.
That was one of the main things that drove me to the Catholic Church was the from well, I'd never gone to a Catholic church before, but all of my Catholic friends, my wife being, from a Catholic family, all talking about how it's
Mhm,
very rigid in the adherence to tradition and in the reverence to God. Now, my experience in, growing up in a Protestant church, I've gone to multiple denominations of Protestant churches. I've gone to Baptist churches. I've gone to Presbyterian churches, Methodist churches. I will say that the Methodists are a lot closer to Catholics than
yeah.
a lot of the other denominations. Matter of fact, the parish I go to now, it started off borrowing the Methodist church while this one was being built back in the 70s.
Mm,
But when I first went to Mass and I saw that every single thing was connected to actual
mhm,
church tradition, to actual scripture, not some individual guy's interpretation of it. I made a joke on Twitter yesterday that arguing with one Protestant is easy, but arguing with two or more is hard because they don't even believe the same things and they start
mm,
arguing with each other. That made a couple of people mad. And
yeah,
again, look, I'm from the older, school of
but it's
you
true.
you talk crap, right? But it's all in good fun. I love my Protestant brothers and sisters. Um, but that's
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
drew me and attracted me the most to the Catholic Church was that there's a defined way in which we worship. The way we worship is not open to interpretation. It is defined. You will have reverence for God. You will have
Mhm.
reverence for the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. And it's not going to be, well, I didn't feel like kneeling. I didn't feel like standing. I didn't feel, no, this is what you do. Because the way you do one thing, the way you worship, it bleeds into the way you do everything else. And if you're worshiping in kind of
Mm.
a half baked manner, the rest of your life is going to fall into that half baked manner, the way you do everything else.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it is that there's a stability, and in the world we live in most aspects of their life, there is a lack of stability. You don't know if you're going to wake up tomorrow and have the same job that you had today. You don't know how your friends are going to behave and act towards you, how your family is going to accept you. All these different things. There's so many questionable things in your life, but you can walk into any Catholic church on any given day, and I don't care what part of the world you're in, what city you're in, you're going to hear the same gospel at any church every day. You're going to hear a very similar homily based on that gospel every single day. The teachings aren't changing from week to week or month to month. It's not like, okay, 2,000 years ago, Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me. But in today's Catholicism, we're moving away from that. You can leave your cross on the ground. We don't change the teachings from day to day, out of hour. And I think that that's also one of the reasons why the young people specifically late teens, early 20s into the 30s, are being attracted to the church today because so many aspects of their life today. It's hard being a young person today. I mean, when I was growing up, there was that stability in the family. Um, you knew what to expect on a daily basis from mom, from dad, from your siblings, from your school. They don't have that today. They're they there's there's this unsureness that goes along with being a young person today, and I think that the church offers that stability that, let's be honest, every single person would love to have. You want something in your life that you can hold on to, you can grab a hold of, and you know it's going to be there for you. The church is going to be there for you. The church founded by Christ is not going anywhere. The teachings aren't going anywhere. You may disagree sometimes. You may have difficulty understanding or following some of the teaching sometimes, but they're not going to change. They're the same. So I honestly think it's that stability that is attracting people. And since we've been moving back towards a traditional form of Catholicism, man, that stability is like right in your face. I mean, I grew up as a Byzantine Catholic, and you go to the liturgy of Saint John Chrysostom, the liturgy of Saint Basil the Great. You see the way that we are during the holy days with the incense and everything that takes place. Um, Man, you're someplace special. That's why we have the in the Byzantine rite we have the iconostas that separates the altar area from the rest of the church, because it's telling you that on the other side of that screen is heaven, literally heaven on earth. And so I grew up having that tradition and seeing the beauty of Catholicism. And so I'm excited about this more of a conservative approach, if you will, coming back to the church.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how long you've been on Twitter, but several years ago, and I think there's still a couple of them around. There's these guys that it's funny. They're all about the return to like the Roman Empire and all this other. They've got the return with the V in place of the U, following the Roman alphabet and all this other.
Right.
And I'm like,
Right.
I can get on board with that. Let's return to the kingdom of Jerusalem. Because the fickleness and instability of everything outside the church is disheartening. It's something
Mhm.
that it leaves people wondering where they stand, or am I in the right place? What's the point of any of this? But like you
Yeah.
said, when you walk into a mass, and it doesn't matter if you're in St. Augustine, Florida, Taylor, South Carolina, or Seattle, Washington, if
Mhm.
it's the 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever Sunday of Easter, the liturgy going on is the exact same. You can be doing it in you know, New Braunfels, Texas, or you can be doing it in the middle of nowhere, Nigeria. And guess what? The liturgy's the same.
Mhm.
It's a universal
Yeah.
experience. It's stable. You're not going to say, "Oh, well, I wonder what my pastor um, said last Sunday, or what the scriptures and readings were last week because I missed mine while I was in another state." No, you didn't. You didn't miss anything. It's the exact same. It follows the liturgical calendar. And I'm okay with the return to a more traditional form of society where these traditional values and these traditional and fundamental timeless truths of the church are taken more seriously by the people. And I
Mm.
think, like you said, that's what people are attracted to, because that's what brought me in. You know,
Yeah.
it's not, oh well, today the pastor's going to be talking about the potluck during his sermon. No, that stuff, comes after the mass has ended and there's some announcements, or it's not even mentioned. It's just written down in the
Sure.
bulletin. You know, Pick up the bulletin and read it. you know, um, but no, I get the draw.
Yeah. And I see that on Twitter, like, usually on Monday mornings, someone, from one of the Protestant denominations, they'll throw that out there as a question. Hey, what did your pastor preach on this Sunday? And there'll be 50, 100, 200 different answers. And I don't think that should be that like that. I look at the Catholic Church in today's world as kind of being, I picture, the apostles in their boat out in the storm, being thrown around, tossed around. The waves are crazy. The wind is blowing, and there's Christ walking smooth and steady across the water towards them. I see the Catholic Church as Christ in that regard, where he's saying, "Hey, I know the world is nuts right now. I know the waves are tossing you around. People are pulling you in every direction, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. The church isn't going anywhere. You've got that stability. Here's your buoy. Here's your life jacket in this just wild west world that we live in today." And I think I mean, I know it gives me a lot of comfort anytime I'm struggling with something, um, and I'm really kind of on the border of getting down about something. I walk into any Catholic church, and I just go up in the front and I kneel down and I pray. The doors are open all day. I've got a number of churches around here that have 24-hour adoration chapels. Man, I tell you what, if that doesn't set you straight, and get you feeling a lot better about life, spending an hour with Christ, and that's again something unique to the Catholic Church. And nobody else has that. I can sit in a room with Christ. I can talk to him. I can listen to him. It's what a beautiful gift that is. And again, that's just part of that traditional church that's coming back. It's coming back strong, and thank God for it.
Yeah, my parish has a perpetual adoration, and my wife and I joined the St. Thomas Aquinas Guild of Adorers
Nice.
at our parish. And we have a regular
Mm,
hour every week. We've got a
nice.
co-adore. We've got the whole phone tree in case someone can't make it. We get someone to cover. Um, but I love that you used the, you know, Peter and the other apostles in the boat analogy there, because I'm gonna out myself a little bit. We talked yesterday after the show about the movies you like and the movies I like, but I'm gonna out myself a little
Yeah.
bit here. One of my favorite shows is Call the Midwife, and it's based on the true events of this nurse back in the 50s
Yeah.
and the 60s that worked in the East End of London while uh, living in this house that was maintained by Anglican nuns. That they were all nurses, they were all midwives, and they served the East End of London. But one of the sisters on the show,
Mm,
she mentioned that, and this is kind of how I feel being a convert. When you grow up and things are always stable, you can lose that appreciation for the stability. So, kind of referring to um,
mhm.
the cradle Catholics here. But for me, it was like I was
Yeah.
in that boat. It was like I was in that boat, and I think the reason a lot of converts have so much more zeal and just energy for the Catholic faith is because they've been in that boat their entire lives. And then finally, right there, standing on the water, is Christ, and everything is still. And it's that
Mm,
one stable, immovable rock that's right there.
yeah.
And it's your lifeline, it's your safety. And once you've lived in the storm, you really appreciate stability when you find it, you know. And so I like that you use that
Yeah.
that imagery of Peter and the apostles coming out onto the sea with Christ. But yesterday after I made that joke about arguing with Protestants, and it's hard to do it with more than two, one of the things came up about a long perpetuated misconception about Catholics is that, we don't read the Bible, you know, and I was happy to show the guy. I said,
Mm,
here's, we live stream our 10 a.m. mass. So I was like, here you go. Here's my 10 a.m. mass. You show me where we
mm,
don't read the Bible. Well, yeah, you only read it in Latin. No, no, no. Watch the video. You can see you can
yeah,
see the lectors get up and they're reading it in English. Well, well. He kept trying to move the goalpost because some people just want to have an argument. But you know what? If I'm being honest, after the liturgical calendar moves on beyond ordinary time and the lavender
mhm,
music sheets start coming back, I enjoy it so much more when we're singing the Gloria and the Agnus Dei in Latin.
yeah,
I enjoy it so much more.
yeah,
And it reminds me of that movie with Russell Crowe. Some people have, like I'm a movie guy, and not every movie is going to be approved of by the Catholic Church, and that's okay. But there was the movie,
sure. Yeah.
the Pope's Exorcist is what it was called. It's a very fictional
Oh, yeah.
version of Gabriel Amort's Father Gabriel Amort's book or in his life, right? But one of the things that he said when he was talking to the priest that was going to assist him in the exorcism was, "Do you know Latin?" He goes, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "Well, say the prayer in Latin because the prayers are more powerful in Latin." And I know it was a joke, right? And because he kind of giggled when he said it, the character, Russell Crowe playing Father Amort. But
Mm.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of do feel that way. I feel more deeply connected when I pray in Latin and when I sing in Latin.
Listen, I've heard priests say that Satan hates Latin, that he despises it, and so that there might be something to that about prayers in Latin being a little stronger. And but again, this goes back to what we were saying earlier about how it doesn't matter what church you're in, what country you're in, you're seeing the same liturgy, the same mass. And with that familiarity, I don't think the language matters as much. I've been to church in Montreal, Canada. It was in French, but I knew exactly what was going on every step of the way. I don't speak French other than oui oui, but that's the case. And in my Byzantine church, when I go there, quite often the mass or the liturgy is said in what we call Old Slavonic or Church Slavonic. Now, I've learned a lot of it just from growing up with it. But again, I know what's going on. I know what's being said. So the fact that it's in another language doesn't really matter. And it doesn't, in fact, if anything, it makes me focus even more, trying to pay attention, trying to pick out what's being said and what's being done during the liturgy. So, so I'm okay. That's why I have no issue with I mean, I've been to the Latin Mass. It's not a regular part of my life, but I can certainly appreciate it, regardless of the fact that it's in Latin. Um, and going back to also what you said when people say, "Oh, you Catholics don't read the Bible." Well, I'm thinking, and like you're saying, I mean, go to a mass. Not only do you have the three readings, you have the Old Testament and New Testament. You have the an epistle there, but basically the history of the church is right there in the mass from start to finish. And and also I say to folks that say that we Catholics don't read the Bible, I say, well, stop by my Bible on Thursday night. There's Bibles that be out that night.
Yeah, I guess they think we do the Bible studies in Latin too, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But no, I mean, look,
Hey, my Bible
with
study lasts a little longer because it's got 6 extra books.
yeah, Well, it takes us longer to read through the Bible because there's more books. But no, with Latin
Yeah, exactly.
being kind of the universal, well, ecclesial Latin being the universal language of the church, learning it is very important to me. And I've got some Latin grammar books over here that I go through because if I go to a Latin mass in Algeria, I speak the language that's being said
Mhm.
in mass. If I go to a Latin mass in California, I speak the language being said in Latin. I saw this wonderful video yesterday. This woman, she was from somewhere in Africa. There was not a lot of context, but she was wearing, traditional African clothes. She had like the head wrap, and she was singing the Gloria in Latin. She probably didn't speak a lick of English,
Mm,
but I knew every single word that she was singing. And that's one of the most beautiful things
yeah.
ever. I love the fact that if you've ever learned any of the prayers or any of the songs from the Catholic Church in Latin, that you can go to anyone that speaks any language and you've got that one thing in common with them if they've done the same.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, you really can't say that for any other religion where you can go across the globe and hear the mass spoken in a language that you or at least somewhat familiar with. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't have any superior language skills. I spent like a decade living in the American Southwest doing construction, and I would have to drive to like El Paso and Juarez to go pick up guys, and I had to learn what I call construction Spanish, which is not the cleanest version of Spanish, but
Yeah.
I know enough,
Yeah.
and I'm fluent enough in it to you know have conversations with subcontractors on what I need them to do. But
Yeah.
and I took French in high school too. But I know as much French as you do, except for maybe je m'appelle, which I think that means my name is. I guess I don't know, but
No, no clue.
learning Latin is so hard because it ties into some of the Spanish and the other Romantic languages that I've picked up here and there
Hmm.
along the way. But I've never wanted to learn a complete language more in my life simply because of that. And maybe it's true. Maybe the devil does hate, uh,
Yeah.
and we should do everything we can to do everything he hates.
Oh, absolutely. That's why you got to call on the Blessed Mother as often as possible. Satan is not a big fan. And
Well,
I
no, no, no.
mentioned
Didn't you
yesterday I
didn't
have
didn't you
a bunch
hear?
of yeah,
Didn't you hear
yeah.
that manly men don't pray to Mary? Isn't that what was going around yesterday on social
Thank
media?
thank you, Pastor Gabe. Yeah, that's I that one. I mean, I disagree with that young man on Twitter quite often, but where he got that one, that manly men don't pray to Mary. I don't know. I mean, I honestly, he's one of these guys that he tries to cause a stir. He tries to his entire Twitter feed is attacking the Catholic Church, and um, I don't know. I notice, and I could be wrong. This might be just my perspective. I notice that Catholics on social media will talk about what they love about Catholicism. Non-Catholics will talk about what they hate about Catholicism. So I'm saying, you know, if you have a faith other than Catholicism, embrace it, love it, talk about that. Tell me why I should love what you're saying. Why look for the common ground, anything like that. But I've always been taught if you if you can't say anything good about what you believe in, you can only bash what someone else believes in. Then maybe you need to re-examine what it is that you believe in. Maybe there's less to it than you think. And so these guys that kind of have made a career out of bashing the Catholic Church, I don't. I mean, I guess it's a I guess it's almost like their form of advertising, and they do probably get some weak Catholics because they'll because then they'll say, oh well, we just had three Catholics come and join our church out here, and they told us that yes, you guys you worship and bow down to Mary and to statues, and you're idolaters, and you don't and you never heard. I heard there was one woman on Twitter said she grew up in the Catholic Church. She went to mass every Sunday. She never heard the gospel said in her church. So, in response to that, I said, "Please tell me what church it is that you grew up in. Tell me the diocese. Tell me the church. Tell me the pastor's name. Whatever you remember, because I need to look into this." Well, she blocked me and disappeared from Twitter because obviously what she's saying was not true. It's just these inflammatory comments that people make about Catholicism, that they can't actually back up. I mean, I always say that you can't say anything negative about the Catholic Church that's true because, or about the theology of the Catholic Church that's true, because everything about the Catholic theology is true. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a Catholic. And and so it's an interesting little thing on there about Twitter and that guy. Yeah, I was amazed by that too. About real men don't pray to Mary. That's okay. Sad to find out that I'm not a real man, but there you go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm totally devastated as well, man.
I'm sure
But no,
it's
I get it.
something.
Like, if the best thing about your denomination is that it's not Catholicism, it doesn't really have a lot going for it, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Now, if you tell
and
me
that's what a
all the
lot of these
best
guys.
things about your church and they're talking about how much you revere God and how much your parishioners are involved in bringing other people into your church and how involved you are in helping your community and the worship services are are reverent and rich with the gospel. And you know what, that's an awesome church. If you don't want to join the Catholic Church, I'm completely
Yeah,
okay with you staying there because it sounds awesome. But if you
yeah,
come to me and you go, the best part about being this is I'm not that.
yeah. Yeah, that's my point there is that if yeah, if the only thing you can say about your church is, well, at least it's not Catholic, then it seems there's not a lot of substance there. And people will say that that's not really the case, that there's not the extent of Catholic bashing, but there is. And I do a lot of promotion of Christian music at my church. I bring in various bands, and as long as they're not saying anything theologically funky, I don't care what their background is. But so sometimes I'll go to other churches that they're performing at to just kind of get a feel for their act. And I have sat through. I mean, this is personal experience. I have sat through some of the worst Catholic bashing sermons that you can imagine. And again, and and it's across multiple denominations and non what do you call them, non-denominationals and things like that. And they would say, well, can you believe what the Pope did this week? Can you believe what those Catholics are teaching? Can you believe? Can you believe? Thank God you're all sitting in the pews here instead of in a Catholic church where they're all, I mean, I've been called a pagan. I've been told I'm going straight to hell. Um, it's amazing. I don't make those assumptions about about my Protestant brothers and sisters. If they're leading a virtuous life, if they're living the right way, I'm not going to assume that they're going to hell because they don't have a Catholic after their name. But there you
Yeah.
go.
I mean, what was it that I'm blanking here because I've got like 17 different pieces of scripture rolling through my mind, but whoever's, if he's not against us, he's still for us, right? When Christ was talking to the disciples about the people that were casting out
Yeah,
demons, he goes, they're doing it in your name, but they don't
yeah,
follow you. He goes, that's fine then. Let them be. They shall not lose their reward.
yeah,
You know, I, I,
yeah,
there's no
yeah.
way I would ever believe that just because you're a Protestant doesn't mean you're not going to heaven. That's not the case at all, right?
Exactly.
And it certainly isn't something that me as just Jeff could ever say, I mean, I don't get to speak for the big guy.
Absolutely.
I can speak.
Yeah, I don't. I
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me that people think that that's what we think.
no, no. I mean, I'm not capable of reading people's hearts. I can't into people's souls. Uh, I can see the way they behave, but I don't know what their relationship with Christ is, and that's not for me to know. So I try not to. I try not to make assumptions about those sort of things. Um, but then there are those cases where you can see exactly where somebody stands, and I mentioned to you a few days ago, and it was just another thought that popped in my head about um, about Catholic politicians and presenting themselves in church and for communion and things like that. And I know that's always a hot button topic, but it's one that I think is kind of important. And people will say to me, well, it's not really for a priest or even a bishop to decide if someone is going to receive communion or not. But I've looked through canon law, I've looked through the catechism, and actually it is in certain cases. And like because someone will use the excuse to say, well, you can't stop Joe Biden from receiving communion just because he is a big supporter of abortion, because that would be the same as the priest stopping everyone who comes up there and saying, "Are you an adulterer? Did you binge drink last night? Did you do, and giving you that quiz?" And my response would be that is that the unless otherwise notified, the priest assumes that you're stepping up there in a state of grace. But in the case of a politician who, if they tweet it as they were sitting in the pew, that they're going to try to pass legislation to increase access to abortion or abortion up to birth or things like that, they've publicly stated how they are sinning. So it's not like the bishop or the priest is unaware or is taking a guess at how that politician feels. If they stand up there and say abortion for any reason at any time, funded by the taxpayers, blah blah blah, then when that politician presents himself in church, the priest or the bishop knows exactly where they stand on that. Whereas if when I walk up there, I'm nobody, the priest doesn't know he doesn't know if I sinned on my way in to church that morning. In my opinion, you might disagree, I don't know, but in my opinion, if someone publicly states something that is in defiance of Catholic teaching, I think it behooves the priest to withhold communion until he knows that that person has you know confessed and changed their thought process about that particular subject, whatever it might be. I use abortion as an example, but there are other examples as well. But what
No,
do
no, I do
what do you
not
think about that,
disagree.
Jeff?
I do not disagree. I'm in 100% agreement. You know, one of the things that this was one of my own
All right.
misconceptions about Catholics long before I converted was that, you know, it's okay if I sin because I can just go to confession and get it wiped away. Until I went to confession for the first time, and then you hear the priest say, "Go and sin no more." And then I've got the little booklet that I'm reading,
Mm,
trying to prepare for first confession. I'm like, okay, what is it? Oh, wait, you have to actually be really remorseful and repent and try your very hardest to not ever, ever do it again when you leave. It's not, hey, it's not like getting your car washed after you go off roading. You don't pull in, get cleaned off, pull back out, and head right back onto the dirt trail. No, you don't do that, right? That's an
yeah.
abuse of the sacrament of
Yeah.
reconciliation to even think it works that way. So, yeah, if Biden goes to confession and he repents afterwards and he changes his course of action and his stances toward abortion, then okay, it's a clear and obvious sign he's actually repenting. But if Biden walked into confession today and said, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned," da, da, da,
Yeah.
da, went all the way through, said the act of contrition, was absolved, and then walks out the door and he goes, "More abortions." Sorry,
Yeah.
no. Like I said, it's not a car wash. You don't
Yeah.
walk in, get sprayed off, and come back out. That's not how it works. But for some reason, people think it is. And that's one of the things that kind of gets me about, you know, being a dad, and being like a Catholic father. I have to show my kids, just as a dad, take Catholic out of the equation. I have to show my kids
Mm,
that if I make a mistake, I own up to them. Dad messed up. Dad is sorry. Dad's not going to do that anymore, right? Because it's my job as
yeah.
the leader of my home, the spiritual leader in my home, which is my most local church, is to get my wife and to get my kids to heaven. And I can't do that if I'm living by a bad example, right? But and you're gonna
Yeah.
like how I did this.
Yeah.
Speaking of the ultimate dads, we have our saint of the day, Saint
There he
Joseph
is.
the Worker.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Great segue. Great segue.
great segue. Yeah,
So,
but no,
what do you
is
know about this Saint Joseph?
oh, not a whole lot. I've got this massive prayer card up on my. Not a
Nice.
whole lot. Yeah, not. I don't know much. I'm just collecting prayer cards for everyone, like I used to collect Topps baseball cards back in the day. But no, Saint Joseph is they call him the terror of demons, and you have to think, why is that?
Hmm.
Well, if you think about it, not long after the birth of Christ, he had to flee. Joseph had to flee with Christ and Mary to Egypt because there was a very bitter, angry king that didn't want any competition, and he was going to kill him. Then he came back, and if you go through the entirety of the Gospels, you you won't find anything that Joseph said, but his works are given in detail. But shortly after, the story of the birth, and then right there when Jesus was in the temple and they lost their kid, like most parents do at J.C. Penney. You oh crap, where is he? You didn't realize that he got home, had to go back. Joseph was the ultimate protector of Christ. Imagine that honor, being the guardian of Christ. That's like
Mm,
that's like if you're the guy standing guard in front of a perpetual adoration chapel so no one comes in there and vandalizes the blessed sacrament. It's like that times 1,000 on steroids.
yeah.
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 But we were talking before the show, man. He's the epitome of a dad. We're talking of a good
Yeah.
Catholic father, where talk is cheap, actions mean everything, and he did his duty as the foster father and guardian of Christ until Christ's ministry could begin.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think about that, and you have to think about it. Takes you back to your own childhood and things like that. And I knew to pray because I saw my father pray. I knew to go to church on Sunday because my father went to church every Sunday. I knew to be honest, to be forthright, to be truthful because I saw my father doing that. And um and people don't understand how strong and powerful that example is, whether it's a good example or a bad example. If you are a father, you have got such a tremendous responsibility. And I think about, and it's kind of a sad state of where we are. When I think about my CCD class, and I think that about how many of the dads are there that have a tremendous opportunity to shape their child's spiritual future and where they might wind up when all is said and done. And they don't take advantage of that. Where there are so many dads that the extent of them being spiritually involved in their child's life is dropping them off at CCD once a week. That's it. There's no grace before meals. There's no Sunday mass. There's no holy day mass. There's no family prayer time. There's none of that stuff. It's just I'm dropping my kid off for an hour and a half for CCD class. I'll come by, pick them up later, and that's it. I don't ask them how class went. I don't ask them what they learned. I don't ask them what did they know about Christ today that they didn't know last week. I just drop them off and I pick them up. And I think, man, what a wasted opportunity. You've got one chance with a child to set them down the right path in the right direction, set them towards a Christ-centric life so that they can one day be in heaven. And if you're not doing that as a father, man, what are you doing? I don't care if you're you're making great money and you can take the family on these huge vacations every summer or whatever. That's nice. It's fine. But none of that's going to get your child into heaven. It's a great disappointment to me.
I told you about the book that I wrote with a friend of mine. It was, pretty much based on estovere, which is Latin for be a man.
Mm,
And it's also kind of based off of,
yeah.
Father Richard's book that I didn't learn about until after we wrote this book, by the way. But, be a
Mm,
man, estovere was the last thing that David said to Solomon before he passed away. you know but what
yeah.
what does it mean to be a good man? And part of the things that we pointed out in that book was the decline of male membership in churches. Now, we didn't specify between Catholic
Mhm,
churches or Protestant churches. We just said churches.
mhm,
Now, my friend, he's a Protestant, and he was referring to the Protestant churches where you see a congregation that is predominantly women. And you start to think
mhm,
about this. The dads, they're not going for whatever reason. There's a very emasculated, soft, Jesus is my boyfriend kind of pastor up there, which there are also some really hardcore based guy pastors out there, which more power to them. We need more people
yeah.
like them in the Protestant churches as well. But when,
Mhm,
men are supposed to look to their priests for guidance, someone to emulate in their spiritual life. And when you see that, it's kind of a bit of a turnoff, right? Like, I can't emulate this guy who starts blubbering every time he starts talking about Jesus loved me. Like, come on. Like, if you want me to cry,
yeah,
let me
yeah.
see Rudy get accepted to Notre Dame. I'll cry, right? But come on. I
Yeah,
I get,
yeah.
but when you see that these congregations with the declining male attendance, then you look a little bit closer and you see that the women are there with their daughters. They're not there with their sons. Maybe they're young
Mm,
sons. But then these kids, these young boys are turning 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they're going, well, dad's not going. I'm going to hang out with dad while mom and sister go to church. And
yeah.
it's such a wasted opportunity to grow in faith with your kids and help guide them, because look, you're I don't care if you've been a Catholic for 178 years or you've been a Christian for 100, whatever, any denomination. You're never going to stop learning more and growing in your faith. And you're missing this huge opportunity to grow in faith with your children. And that's something I got to really experience taking my son with me to RCIA, you know,
Mm,
and uh, sitting down at the table watching my wife teach my daughter from the little study guide sheet of, okay, this is a paten, this is the chalice, all the things that she needed to learn before she received her first Holy Communion. And now I'm doing the same thing with the cheat sheet study guide with my son as he prepares for his first Holy Communion. I've gotten to grow because they all started going to church the same time I did. I woke up one morning and said, hey, babe, we're all going to church next Sunday. Really? Yeah, which one? I found this cool Catholic church. It's almost an hour away, but we're going. And that's how my family dove headfirst into the church, right? And
awesome.
we've been going ever since. It'll be a year this coming week since we started, right? May
Nice.
7th was the first day in 2023 that we stepped foot into the parish that we're a part of now. I got to experience and learn all of these things and grow in all of these things at the same time alongside my kids.
Mm,
And it's deepened the relationship I have with my kids. We already had a great relationship,
mhm,
but it's taken it to a deeper level. And there's so many
yeah,
dads out there that, you know, they're Christians. They go to mass on
yeah,
Easter and on Christmas, but they're not actively involved in their child's spiritual development. Because what do they say? If you want to learn something better, teach it to someone else.
mhm,
You grow in faith when you're teaching it to your children. And
yeah,
there's so many dads now, but you're protecting their souls as well. Joseph protected Christ when he was in danger and he could not defend himself.
yeah,
You need to emulate that for your kids. You need to protect their souls. As a dad, you should say the only way my kids and my wife are going to hell is if I fail. That should be your
yeah,
motto as a man. The devil is not getting to my wife and my children without having to come through me first.
yeah,
That should be a war cry for a dad to get involved in his children's spiritual lives and help them grow. And I
yeah,
really hope with this like push that we were talking about earlier into the more traditionalist and I don't even like saying conservative Catholic. You
yeah,
know that
yeah, me
because
either.
you're Catholic or you're not,
Yeah,
right? Right? There's no such
yeah,
thing as Catholic light,
no,
right? You're Catholic or you're not. It's not conservative. It's not liberal. It's the truth. If the truth happens to align with what some political ideologues call conservatism, fine. You can
mm,
call it from that perspective, but you're Catholic or you're not, right? But s- still, with that same sentiment in mind, this push that we see towards a return to the traditional values of the church, I hope more dads feel that oomph. You know what I mean? That oomph
yeah,
to head up, draw out your sword, and be a modern day crusader for your family. Lead
yeah,
them to Jerusalem.
yeah, and and that job of being spiritual director of the household does not go away ever. Um, it with one of my men's groups I'm a part of. Uh, there's this. It's sad to see because there's so many of these guys that talk to me and they're in their they're in their 40s and their kids are in their 20s. They're in their 50s. Their kids are in their 30s. They're in their 70s and their kids are 50. And at some point, their son, their daughter, maybe all of the kids have walked away from the church. And they say to me, listen, I pray every day. I talk to them about coming back. I go to church every day. And they've just said, no, it's not for me. And it's sad, but I give so much credit to these guys because I say, you talk to them about this? Yeah, I do. Do you pray for them every day? Yeah, I do. Um, and I mean, that's all they can do. But and you've got those examples out there. Saint Augustine with his mother, Saint
I
Monica.
was
You've got
just going to say,
right
pray for the intercession of Saint Monica.
exactly because it does, and that's what I tell them. I say, hold on, even if it's till your last breath. Pray for your kid to come back to the church because you don't know when it's going to happen, and maybe hey, maybe it happens on your deathbed because maybe when your son comes in to see you in the hospital room there, and you tell him with almost your last breath, I'm still praying for you to come back. Maybe that's what's going to do it. Maybe that's what it's going to take. So you can't, just like I can't imagine St. Joseph would have ever come into a situation where he said, that's it, I'm done. Protecting this kid is a little bit too much. I'm out of here. He never would have done that. And, and I think it's the same for us. There's never that point where you say, my kid is too far gone. they're too far removed from the faith. I'm done. I'm not trying anymore. No, you keep going. I hear, and I've heard those stories. My kid was away from the church for 17 years. They came back. My kid was away for 30 years, and they came back, and God bless them for that. Um,
It took me almost 40 to end up here.
exactly, exactly.
And my
So
only regret is that I was too hard-headed to do it sooner.
yeah, yeah, but you did it, and I mean, I look at this. I'm one of those up half full kind of guys, and I don't care if you found the church on the day you died. You found it. Your reward is going to be the same. And so that, man, to me, that's just a tremendous blessing. That whenever somebody comes home to the church, man, that is a reason to slaughter the fatted calf and invite the neighbors over and have a hoo ha, because any soul gained for Christ is what bigger thing is there to celebrate? There's nothing that compares.
Yeah. Like I said, I joined the church after 4 of my kids were grown and moved out. I'm really lucky that my 20-year-old, who's currently in the U.S. Army, is
Nice.
in a over a year long relationship with this very lovely young lady, uh, that I'm pretty sure he's going to end up marrying. And it's great because she comes from a very devout Catholic family. She's
Nice.
Catholic. Um, he is not yet, but I'm going to say it as yet. Uh, and of course, he's got some incentives to stay with her because she's very rich. So
That
that
works.
means that means he'll keep her around long enough and let that Catholic influence rub off on him.
Hmm.
Because again, he's an 8-hour drive away from me right now,
Yeah.
where he's stationed. But then his and his 3 older brothers, they are not interested at all because they weren't raised in it. Because I wasn't
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah.
But my younger kids are because they're being raised in it. And so the
Yeah.
only thing I can do is I can pray for the intercession of Saint Monica that God hears our prayers and brings them into the church.
Yeah.
And you know what? If I have to do that every single day, if, you know, every time I'm in the Adoration Chapel, that's what I'm doing. That's one of the decades that I'm praying along my rosary, then I'll do it till the day I die.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to, and you have to, like Bible tells us, you pray unceasingly, and that's what God wants to see from us. Um, and you have to have that faith and that belief that whoever it is that you're praying to come back, that they will. I mean, you hear the stories about Christ as the good shepherd. He loses one sheep. He leaves everyone behind, and he goes and he searches until he finds that one lost sheep. And he's going to do that for your son, for your daughter, for your mother, for your father, whoever it is that has wandered from the pen there. Christ, with your help here on earth, is going to go looking for that lost sheep. I mean, that's his purpose. That's our purpose. So it's certainly something, that a task that's well worth taking on. And especially if we go back to St. Joseph and being a father in today's world, man, you have got to, the wolves are out there, man. The wolves are out there big time, and they want your child to do anything other than go to church. And so you've got to be vigilant, you've got to be prayerful, and you've got to work towards that.
100%. But we are running out of time, and I think that was an amazing place to wrap it up. All you dads out there listening or watching the show, if you know other dads that, or maybe even you yourself, aren't as actively involved as you could be in your children's spiritual development, get back into it because you
Mhm.
grow as you teach, because that's how you learn better, by teaching to someone else. So you can make it a journey together. I promise you, it's going to deepen your relationship with them. And if you're struggling to get started on that, you can always start by downloading Holy Habits from the App Store or Google Play. And if you don't know what that is, go back and watch the other two videos. It's the best habit tracker out there. No, it's a habit tracker that helps you solidify a consistent habit of daily prayer, daily engagement in God's word, daily adoration, whatever it is. And it even suggests habits that
Yeah.
are generated from the rich 2,000 plus year tradition of the Catholic Church. But Ed and I will see you all tomorrow at this very poor quality production of a show because you have nothing better to do than listen to us for an hour, and
Truth.
that's fine. All right. We will see you all tomorrow.
Sounds like a plan. See you, Jeff.